So do you want to tell me what it's all about?
Yeah, so we're entering the UNESCO competition this year, and we're very passionate about the issue of fast fashion mainly, but also in terms of sustainability and different ways to be sustainable in our locality and in Ireland. So we're just trying to get the viewpoints of people who know a lot about it and who have done their best to raise awareness to maybe inform us better, but also to help other people gain a better understanding.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Fire away any questions.
So our first question was if you could tell us about the inspiration behind your project and what got you interested in sustainable living.
Yeah, so I suppose how the Uses project started off is, I don't know if you would have remembered, just before, about this time last year, we were actually Sustainable Fashion Dublin. It was before we went through the rebrand. And how we got involved in it was, I was always really interested in charity shopping, and Geraldine kind of like loved flea markets and the story kind of behind clothes. And at the time that we started Sustainable Fashion Dublin, Geraldine was actually working for a fashion magazine as a journalist. So she was kind of like knee deep in the fast fashion industry, really promoting consumption and expenditure and really promoting fast fashion, I suppose. And it just wasn't quite sitting right with her. She could just see, you know, the essence of her whole life, her career was trying to get people to buy more clothing, when we were hearing more and more how the fast fashion industry was disruptive to the planet and also to the people who were making our clothing. So we kind of wanted to show people that there just was an alternative. So we organised a charity shop crawl. Was the first ever event we organised, just to show people what could be found in charity shops. We just wanted to kind of, you know, open people's eyes to the possibility that you didn't have to go onto websites or fast fashion. And from there it kind of just snowballed, and the more and more events that we ran, the bigger our interest grew, and we kind of started researching more and learning more ourselves, and kind of realizing how problematic the fast fashion industry is. And we found that a lot of people want an alternative, you know, like all of our events were selling out. There was an interest there. People wanted an alternative, but they sometimes just didn't even know where to start. If they didn't want to shop fast fashion, what could they do instead? So that was kind of what spurred us on, for sure. And then we rebranded the Useless Project during the summer, because we were kind of starting to dip our toes into other facets of sustainability as well. We were looking at food waste and sustainable parenting, sustainable lifestyle, sustainable travel, all these different things. So Sustainable Fashion Dublin wasn't really applicable anymore, but it definitely started with sustainable fashion.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I suppose as well how Geraldine like saw it from the other point of view. I think that's something interesting that I think a lot of people, if they knew more, their eyes would be open.
We always say that. We always think that, like, sometimes, you know, knowledge is power, but it's also so annoying sometimes that we know what we do, because I can never just go into a high street shop and buy an item of clothing now, you know. I remember I was going on holidays like 2 years ago, and I needed to buy a swimsuit, and I was going the next day, and I couldn't allow myself to go into H&M and buy a swimsuit, you know, because I was like, I know who's making those, I can't do it. So I was traipsing around loads of charity shops looking for a swimsuit, you know, like, knowledge is power, but then when you know, sometimes it's a curse.
Oh yeah, I definitely get that. That kind of links into our next question, which is like, do you think that a lot of young people are interested in sustainability, and what do you think can be done to encourage more to get a better understanding of it and to be interested in it?
Yeah, I think definitely, like, that's a great question, and I think it's absolutely true. You know, we're seeing more and more young people taking an interest. We're seeing, you know, it's young people who are leading the school strikes for climate on a Friday. It's the young people who are really turning their back on fast fashion. It's the young people who are even like taking an interest in like maybe adopting a vegetarian lifestyle 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever it may be. You know, that's the demographic of people. It's young people who are really, you know, taking an interest in sustainability, which is amazing to see. And it's kind of, you know, it's kind of annoying, I'd imagine. I'm just be above your category. I'd still hope I'm in the young people category. But it is, you know, it's my age demographic, and more so your age demographic, that are actually going to have to deal with the effects of climate change. So it's kind of unfortunate, but I feel like your demographic has to take an interest, because it is the world that you are coming into. So, you know, it has to change. Insofar as what can be done, I think that a lot needs to be done. Like, we are all about individual change, and everybody, you know, saying no to fast fashion, and, you know, trying to cut down on their carbon footprint, trying to recycle correctly, blah, 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 blah. But what also really needs to happen is systemic change within government, and lobbying and signing up petitions, and making sure that the government isn't allowing fracking to happen, making sure that the government have processes in place for maybe are regulations in place for, you know, companies who don't recycle, or whatever that may be. So what I would love to see happen is for young people to be engaged more with policy, to know what's going on, because even right now when I look at the government, I'm like, what the hell is going on? How do I go to the government and say that this is important to me, you know? Like I can't imagine if it was, you know, if I was in school, I'd be like, what? So I'd love for it to be a bit easier for, I don't know, if maybe a class, if there was a program, whatever it may be, to show young people how to kind of get involved with government lobbying and government policy.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, especially the point about schools. I think schools could play a huge part in it if they're willing to put the time into it, because I think a lot of things we take at school, we might take more, we learn at school, we might take a bit more seriously than, you know, something we might read on social media. So I think that's actually something we haven't come across yet. That's definitely an interesting point. Thanks.
So would that kind of be really the best solution for fast fashion, to the fast fashion problem in Ireland?
I think so. I think that, you know, like there's a lot of problems with, you know, like fast fashion retailers and like selling clothing, and, you know, the turnover at which clothing is being turned over in these fast fashion shops, like, you know, fast fashion outlets. Like I think Zara brings out over 1,000 new items of clothing a week, you know, and like there's just the turnover of clothing is so fast, which is really, really problematic. But, you know, on the ground, I do think that on the ground, say us not supporting fast fashion and, you know, the interest and the action coming from the individual is important. Like an example of that is Forever 21. Forever 21 closed down a couple of years ago because they were selling cheap clothing that was of poor quality, and it didn't sell. Like, you know, they thought that their business model was infallible, that it was going to succeed forever, that, you know, young people wanted cheap clothing, that's all they wanted, and it turned out that it wasn't true, and they ended up, you know, closing shop. That's happened with Topshop again recently as well. So I do think that, you know, young people, or people in general, saying no to fast fashion is making a difference, but I do think that it needs to come from the top down as well, for sure.
Sorry, yeah, just the next question. Zoe, I think you're in the next question.
Oh, I am. I'm so sorry about that. I thought it was Saoirse. So the next question we had was kind of...
I think you guys could be frozen. I don't know if I'm frozen.
Yeah, I think, are you frozen now? I think you're coming back. I'm not sure.
No.
You know, I think you're after freezing. I'm not sure. She's gone. Oh, she's just coming back in, I presume.
Okay, so
Hang on.
so wait.
Hey,
Yeah,
sorry,
I think you're back now. Yeah,
Sorry,
you just froze for a second. You're back.
So have you any more questions?
Yeah, actually the next question we were going to ask is, aside from, because clearly the point you're making about the working from the top down and the government responsibility is a huge one, and I think it's really, it's an interesting one, because we haven't heard that from any of the other businesses or projects that we spoke to. But would you have any tips on like a personal level for anyone trying to make a change to be more sustainable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what sustainability really comes down to is just slowing down. You know, it's not, sustainability isn't this new trend, this new movement. It's been going on for hundreds of years before we got into this mess, is what sustainability was. You know, sustainability was our grannies who were sewing buttons back onto shirts or darning socks. You know, it was our moms who may have had, like, made spaghetti bolognese for dinner one day and with the leftover bolognese made lasagna the next day, or whatever. You know, like, that's sustainability. Sustainability isn't this new trend of like, how can we make this world better with bamboo toothbrushes and fancy lunchboxes and keep cups. You know, it's really about slowing down and taking stock of our actions, what we're consuming, and the carbon footprint, water footprint, and labor footprint that's associated with everything that we're buying. So I think the first step is really just slow down and realize what you're consuming. And like, that's everything from a cup of tea to a t-shirt to, you know, a new bed sheet, whatever it may be, and just realize the kind of the footprint that comes along with that, and just using what you already have. Like when it comes to sustainable fashion, it's not about going out and buying an organic cotton t-shirt or, you know, buying, even like, you know, supporting Irish designers, etc. It's really, really important. But what it really comes down to is just reusing what we already have, engaging in that circular economy. There are more clothing on the planet than ever before, and there's enough clothing on the planet that we can just circulate it amongst ourselves. So our kind of like number one top tip that we give to somebody if they're looking to engage in sustainable fashion is one day, you know, take a Saturday morning, get up early, blare some good tunes, get a pot of tea on, take everything out of your wardrobe and just toss it on your bed. Take everything out of all of your drawers, the boxes under your bed, everything. Just toss everything on your bed and just like take note of what you have and pack it back into your wardrobe. And in doing so, you're going to realize you've so much more clothing than you think you have. You may rediscover things that you forgot you had. You may look at things differently and think, oh wow, I've never thought about putting those jeans with that skirt or with that shirt or that shirt with that blouse or whatever it may be. And like that's a great way to start if you're like looking to kind of like start on the sustainable journey, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting as well in terms of like circular economy, because like before we did this project, we'd never really even understood things like that. And I think that's the kind of problems that a lot of people our age, just like the tip you gave there, they mightn't even have an understanding or think about it. So I think it's just, yeah, I think that's important to realize. It's just kind of the little things that make a difference.
Completely, yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of ties into next thing we kind of wanted to know about, which was we feel that like people often buy fast fashion because it's cheap, but it's also convenient. So like, do you think that Irish clothes shops could be putting a better foot forward in terms of trying to become more sustainable? And do you have any ideas that like if someone had a business and was trying to become more sustainable, like how they could achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like the thing with fast fashion is, you know, it has its part to play, it has its role to play, you know, like I come from a position of great privilege where like I can go into a charity shop. I'm like a skinny bodied white person. I can go into a charity shop and like I'm guaranteed to find something that I'm going to fit my body that I like that's just point blank. Whereas like if I'm from a different demographic, if I'm living in a different body size, if I have a different income bracket, that's just not always possible for people. So, you know, fast fashion is important for a lot of people. It's important for like the single mom who has to send 5 kids to school and needs to buy white shirts and pennies because where the hell else is she going to get them? You know, like it has its part to play, most certainly. And like that's really important to recognize, because what's kind of happened over the past few years is that the sustainability movement has kind of been seen as quite elitist, which it can be. Like in all honesty, if you did want to buy a white organic cotton shirt, like you can be paying 200 quid for it, which is just absolutely outrageous, you know. So it is, you know, it does have its part to play, and it's all of those concerns are so true and like understandable, and I think it's worth noting that like we completely stand by them. I think when it comes to like Irish shops, what they can do differently or what they could do differently is trying to engage in that circular economy. So whether there is like a take back scheme, whether there's whether they could have, you know, one day a month in the shop where customers who bought an item of clothing can bring it in if it's missing a button or if it has a tear or anything like that. Like that's what Patagonia do, you know, they have repair days where you can bring in anything that you bought in the shop and they'll repair it. So like that again is just extending the lifespan of an item of clothing, you know, all those kind of things, just trying to engage in the circular economy wherever possible.
And we were wondering, do you think the government can promote sustainability in Ireland?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the interest is there amongst people, amongst young people in particular. I think that the interest is there. So I think the government definitely need to do better to promote sustainability. It's kind of interesting though, because, you know, with the government promoting sustainability, it could just be seen as them, you know, like passing on the baton to like, you guys need to do it, which there's a lot of guilt, you know, like if I go to a coffee shop now and I don't remember my keep cup, I'm like, oh my God, I'm the reason for climate change, you know, and I'm not the reason for climate change, you know. The reason for climate change is like fracking and stuff, which the Irish government, you know, may be signing off on, whatever. So I think that they need to support sustainability and like encourage it amongst young people and people in general, have recycling schemes, have take back schemes, etc. But I think also like really try to analyze what they can do to make some long-term impacts when it comes to like burning of fossil fuels, you know, reducing plastics, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think that the government plays a huge role in terms of what they allow, but also whether we encourage or discourage the attitudes of people. Like if that comes from a bigger body, I think more people will definitely listen to it.
Completely. And like that's, you know, what the Paris Climate Agreement kind of like goes on is like peer pressure amongst countries. So like I think there is a place for that in society, you know, not peer pressure, but like, you know, but it is true, you know, like if I did see one of my friends do a big fashion haul from ASOS, I'd be like, do you know what I mean? But like that's what like the Paris Climate Agreement is, like peer pressure amongst countries. Like there's no fines or punishments for any country who doesn't meet their targets, but like another country could be tutting another one. Do you know what I mean? So I think that like there is a space for that peer pressure, sort of, within reason. I don't want you to quote me and say Taz from the Useless Projects believes in bullying.
And but the next question we had was, what do you think of social media, and what kind of role would you say that plays in sustainability in Ireland?
Yeah, I think it plays an absolutely massive role at the moment. And I think it's really, like, it's hugely to blame for the kind of rise in sustainable fashion more so recently, for loads of reasons. But I think that it is really important. You know, like it or lump it, I actually just had a chat last night with my housemates, and we were like trying to decide whether the internet was a good thing or a bad thing. But, you know, like it or lump it, it's where we're getting a lot of our information at the moment. It is, you know, so using it to kind of spread the message of sustainability, or, you know, a low carbon lifestyle, whatever, it is really important. And when you think more specifically about sustainable fashion, it's great because up until now, maybe up until, you know, before social media per se, if you were shopping sustainably and you were going to a charity shop, for example, if you had no interest in fashion, you had no interest in, or you had no knowledge on like what suits you, etc., etc., going into a charity shop could be the most daunting thing in the world. You know, like you wouldn't even know where to start. But I think like even when you think of following influencers or accounts that are interested in sustainable fashion who are styling outfits, like that simple step, you know, makes it a little bit easier for people for sure. Or like, you know, vintage shops, like I don't know if you guys follow Spice Vintage, but she selects vintage items of clothing and styles them together. And again, that just gives people ideas and it makes it more accessible. You know, it's all about making it accessible, and the social media, Instagram and stuff, I feel like does make it more accessible, does make sustainability more accessible.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting as well, because I mean, like, we're from Kerry, and I mean, I suppose in Dublin and stuff, there might be more awareness towards sustainability, or there might be more vintage shops, or there might be more. So I think social media for us definitely plays a role in our understanding, because from where we're from, there isn't a huge kind of sustainable fashion or understanding of that. There just isn't a lot of, not people don't understand, but there's not a lot of shops and stuff that cater for that. So I think that social media and online shopping for us is really what has gained us our knowledge.
Yeah, and it's great like that, and that, you know, that again makes it accessible for people, which is really important. People who aren't living in Dublin or Cork or Galway, or places where there are vintage shops, you know, like Depop is amazing. You know, it's such a great resource for people. And there's another one, do you know Thriftify?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's again an Irish company, but just really cool, you know, like a great initiative. And there's more and more things happening like that, like New Wardrobe as well. So again, just making it accessible, I think like that's the solution, because, you know, there's no point preaching to the choir anymore. There's no point, you know, me preaching to all of my friends in Dublin anymore of like, you know, you need to go into these vintage shops, you need to do this, blah, blah, blah. Like they already do that, you know, like, so how do we then target the people who don't have access to kind of that right now? And that's definitely through social media or those apps.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an important point.
So kind of the next question we have was, out of any events you hold, what are the most effective?
Out of any of the events that we host, so I'm like, when did we host an event again? It's almost been a year. But I think the events that we host, that to be honest, probably swap shops. And the reason for that is because it always opens my eyes to, you know, the interest that different people have in clothing. Like, take for example, we do a like quality control at the door of our swap shops. We usually get about 100 people in. Everybody brings 5 items of clothing, and Geraldine and I will check the clothing just to make sure there's no stains or rips, etc. And every now and then, you know, I'll get a bag of someone's clothes and I'll be like, this is the most hideous bag of clothes I have ever seen. Nobody is going to want this. What the hell? Like, it's going to be on the shelf. And then after the swap shop, someone will come up to me and hold up the shirt and be like, look what I found. I've been looking for something like this for ages. I'm so happy. And it's like, it opens my eyes that, you know, like the circular economy works. You know, there are people who want everything. Like, even the stuff that I think is hideous, people want. And like vice versa, stuff that I think is lovely may still be on the shelf at the end. So I think it really the swap shops really opens my eyes and other people's eyes to the fact that like everybody wants everything. You know, nothing needs to go in the bin. Nothing needs to go in the bin. It can all just be rotated. And I think it's really interesting as well because it builds up on that kind of feeling of connection, which I feel, well, Geraldine and I both feel that we are missing right now in the world. And like that's what the Uses project is. It's about starting small and connecting more and using less. So I think we've lost our connection. Like we've lost our connection to where our food is coming from. We've lost our connection to the hands that are actually making our clothing. Like, you know, like this is an Aran wool jumper that was knitted on the Aran Islands. How amazing. Like I have the connection to that. Whereas like, you know, like this shirt that I know is from Zara, like no connection to that whatsoever. And in swap shops, it's bringing back that sense of connection because somebody will come up and say, I used to wear that t-shirt all the time. I wore that t-shirt to a job interview. I got the job. It's such good vibes in that t-shirt. Connection, and the person will wear that t-shirt and love it. Like I love this jumper a lot more than I love this because of the connection. And like the connection with the clothing when you're swapping them kind of like builds it up again, which I think is really important. So it probably would be our swap shops.
Yeah, and I think that's important as well because we've been talking to some sustainable businesses and it's something like nearly everyone has highlighted that nearly all sustainable businesses or vintage shops or people like you with projects, like they can all talk about like exactly where an item of clothing came from and like exactly how something was made. And we just thought that was such a, like it's so different to maybe the shopping experience that like we would have grown up knowing as normal. And it's just been an eye-opener to us definitely as young people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's like trying to put the value back into that rather than the value being the money. You know what I mean? Like what is value for money? Value for money isn't cheap. Value for money is like valuing the money that went into this and where that money went to, you know? And like that's what I think that's such a good point that, you know, we need to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And we kind of just wanted to finish up by discussing what are your hopes? Like what would you like to see? What type, like how would you like to see Ireland improve in sustainability and what are your hopes for the future sustainability in Ireland?
Yeah, well, I'd love to see, again, kind of like in tune with a lot of the stuff I was saying, I'd love obviously to see more government action and more interaction with young people and kind of interaction with kind of grassroots movements in general. Like I think just recently Not Here, Not Anywhere had this massive campaign to stop fracking off the coast of Ireland, and they succeeded, and they got the Irish government to ban fracking, which is huge. Like that's a grassroots organisation that is affecting the government, stopping fracking that could fund the government millions and millions and millions and millions. So that's absolutely huge. So I think like more of that, most certainly, really would be really great. And definitely I think, you know, when it comes to fast fashion in general, I think maybe like more tariffs, more fines, more levies for these fast fashion houses, opening their eyes to what's happening when the clothing is coming into Ireland and, you know, how much of it is being wasted, you know, or like just taking stock of what is being wasted and maybe bringing out more fines for pollution, bringing out more fines for carbon footprint, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if like there's a fix-all solution as such, but I would just love in general to see them engaging more with people and engaging more, the government that is, engaging more with young people, and then amongst ourselves, just like spreading the word of sustainability, how it is easy, it's accessible, it's cheap, and it's good crack. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be trousers made out of granola and hemp like itchy bras and knickers. Do you know what I mean? It'd be like, it's fun, it's colourful, it's good crack, and that's kind of like the message that we want to spread, because we want it to be accessible to people. That's like our number one goal, is for it to be accessible.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. We found like through this project we've met so many people, we've learned so much, but we've also realized that there's so much more people kind of thinking like-minded to us out there than when we would have thought of previously. There actually is, there's so many people who are trying to raise awareness, and it only takes a bit of a search and a bit of a look around and you find that, and everything just becomes so much more accessible. Like there really is, we have a chance now. I think we just have to use it the best we can.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely.
We just wanted to say a huge thank you for talking to us, because it's really helped our project and it's been such an interesting conversation.
Great, it was great chatting to you guys, and thank you so much for reaching out. If there's anything I can do down the line, just holler. It's no problem at all.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.